I completely disagree with this story. I've got to come out and say it here, guys. The senators, the US politicians making these claims, you all know I've made more than 1,000 videos on batteries, EVs, car companies, technology coming out of China. But these claims, I believe, are completely false. I believe these US politicians have simply made this up. But, hey, I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching The Electric Viking. Great to have you. The United States is lagging way behind Asia 10 to 20 years when it comes to battery research, manufacturing, and procurement of raw materials, according to a letter signed by influential Democratic US senators. And this was reported by Reuters. So this is not made up, but Democrats are saying this. In fact, Republicans have actually made kind of similar comments at times. This letter was written by Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Mark Warner and Energy Committee Chair Joe Manchin. And it cites experts who say that the US is 10 to 20 years behind Asia in commercialization of battery technology. I actually don't think most people know about the best American battery technology that exists, and it's actually possibly better than anything in China right now. The company that created this, the new lithium iron phosphate batteries, which have a higher energy density than anything being manufactured in China right now, it's in the United States. And I made a video about this that was seen, I believe, by well over 100,000 people. But it should be seen by more people because this company needs investment. It needs to grow. The problem with this company is not the technology. The problem is scale. The US government needs to get on board. There is actually quite a number of battery companies in the US that just simply need support and funding. That support and funding was given to Chinese battery companies. That's what's needed here. So US senators, rather than complaining about things, they need to recognize what is actually happening in the US now. I've been reporting on it. These Muppets need to watch this damn channel and see the technology from some of these battery companies in the United States. It's actually very impressive. The problem isn't necessarily the product. The problem is scale. They can't scale up. They don't have the funds. They don't have the contracts. They need some assistance here from you US senators, rather than you guys just complaining about China's advantage. Actually identify that you can solve this problem. And that's my suggestion. But what do you guys think on that one? The heart of the problem lies in China's grip, they say, on the world's battery cell production and America's inability to rise to the challenge. The letter says China makes more than 75% of the battery cells at a global level, while the United States managed to produce less than 10% of the world's lithium-ion batteries last year. Even that number is not really true, because of that, less than 10% weren't really made by the United States. I mean, Panasonic joint venture with Tesla, then Panasonic making their own batteries. But that's like Japanese, American, primarily Japanese, really. I mean, it's really Panasonic manufacturing those cells. That's a pretty large percentage of that battery cell production. There's really not a lot. I mean, then you've got SK Innovation. Then you've got LG Chem. And LG Chem makes batteries for who? General Motors, right? You get those in Chevy Bolt EUV. We all know how that went, but anyway. And Ultium batteries, but they're all actually made by LG Chem, like I said, LG Energy Solutions, and that's a South Korean company. So even though they're made in the US, I mean, they're not American companies really making them. Now, Tesla does make 4680 cells, and the US government, rather than continually attacking Tesla, which is what they seem to do for fun, shits and giggles, they just seem to attack them for some reason. I think if they actually supported them the way they supported, the way the Chinese government has supported their own battery manufacturing industry, probably Tesla would be making more battery cells. Realistically, the funding Tesla gets is nothing. If you look at the funding that BMW, Mercedes, Audi, and the Volkswagen Group have gotten from the German government over the past 30 years, Tesla hasn't even gotten 1% of that. It's unbelievable, the difference. Anyway, China dominates the globe's battery supply chain, including graphite, which is required for most lithium-ion cells. This is particularly worrying, say, politicians in America, as China has decided to restrict exports of graphite last month, making it harder to manufacture the anodes of the cells if you're not a Chinese battery company. I made a video about that issue as well. No one seemed to point that out. It's so strange. I think I'm the only video on YouTube that actually discussed that issue, that I know of anyway. Demand is expected to grow 7 times by 2035. So the US has to do something about this situation. As a result, the letter states that a committee briefing has to take place by the 1st of December on ongoing research and development of next generation battery technologies. A previous unreported letter seen by Reuters underlines the importance of the US becoming a leader in manufacturing batteries and battery components, as well as securing supply chains for the materials that make up those components. Obviously, the US is trying to do this by incentivizing battery incentives. Obviously, next year, those battery cells that go into EVs need to be made in the US. Otherwise, you don't get that credit back from the US government. I don't think that's enough, though, because you can just license. I mean, look, General Motors, Ford, they don't plan on making their own batteries, but they will qualify for these EV incentives simply by using South Korean batteries. I mean, they're South Korean. It doesn't matter. Ultium batteries, these batteries that these big companies are using to sell you cars that you think are American, they're still South Korean, really. So it's not really American. So if they want to really support innovation here, the US government needs to be less bipartisan. I mean, they're trying to unionize everyone, trying to get everyone into the unions. So therefore, they're supporting General Motors and Ford and Stellantis more than they support other companies like Rivian and Tesla or Lucid. Anyway, national security is a part of the discussion, as the Pentagon has said in the past that lithium-ion batteries are crucial to thousands of military systems, including handheld radios, unmanned submersibles, and future capabilities like lasers, directed energy weapons, and hybrid electric tactical vehicles, according to the latest letter signed by the 2 senators. That sort of sounds like the industrial military complex needing battery supply. I'm not so keen on all that, but I think really they're losing sight here of what they really need it for, which is energy storage for solar, for wind, to transform the US grid. That's happening in lots of places. It's happening in some areas of America, others not so much. Energy storage, electric cars, and other things. But those are the primary needs, not laser weapons. Anyway, currently China controls between 60 and 100% of the mining or refining capacity of 5 critical materials used for making most types of lithium-ion batteries, the letter said, adding that it is critical that the US lead in next-generation battery technology and alternate chemistries. This is so strange, guys. If you are a US senator, I'm pretty sure you got access to subscriptions, right, of companies that will give you this information. But rather than actually sourcing this info, these senators said China controls between 60 to 100%. That's a pretty wide gap. 60 to 100. What is it? 60, 61, 99, 100? That's a vast difference. I mean, anyway, very strange letter. I think they really should have thought through what they said in this letter before they actually made it public, because now they just look stupid by saying between 60 to 100%. That's such a wide gap. The 2 senators' latest letter comes after the European Union opened a formal probe into the subsidies received by Chinese electric car manufacturers that are trying to flood the market with cheap EVs. The probe was blasted by the Chinese Ministry of Commerce as being protectionist. And initially, the Chinese government was apparently cited for links to Tesla. So the European Union said, we're going to investigate Tesla. Then they changed their minds. So the European Union then, I think, did some investigation, went, well, actually, Tesla's not actually getting, it doesn't have any ownership from the Chinese government. And there's plenty of companies in China that do. MG Motors, LDV, there's, you name it. There's heaps of car companies in China that are owned, or at least partly owned, by the Chinese government. And Tesla isn't one of them. So they gave up on going after. In the US, Chinese-made vehicles are subject to a 25% tariff that comes on top of the regular 2.5% import tariff for imported cars. So in total, the tariff is 27.5%. That was instituted by Donald Trump, and he was blasted for that. Trump did some pretty wacky stuff, but that was probably one of the smarter things that Trump did. Maybe the only smart thing, but that's one of the smart things that Donald Trump did. And now people are saying that it's a good thing. Keep in mind, though, Donald Trump's chicken tax doesn't apply for cars like some of GM's cars. General Motors is importing electric cars, some of its electric cars from China, selling them in the US using a loophole so it doesn't have to pay that tariff. I made a video about that issue as well. I'll have a new one coming soon about how General Motors and other car companies can get away with importing Chinese electric cars without paying the chicken tax. There is a little loophole they're using. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching.